In 1980, at a Florida campground, young Violet Hanson meets a mysterious woman, Rose the Hat, who lures her in with a magic trick. As Violet realizes they are not alone, silent figures emerge from the woods. Rose assures her they're friends before grabbing her. Moments later, Violet's mother calls out, but there's no answer. In the distance, an RV drives away. Meanwhile, young Danny Torrance and his mother, Wendy, struggle to move on from their terrifying experience at the Overlook Hotel. Danny remains silent, haunted by visions of the hotel's ghosts, especially the rotting woman from room 237. The ghost of the Overlook Hotel's chef, Dick Halloran, appears, teaching Danny to trap spirits in mental lockboxes, warning that his powerful shine makes him a beacon for hungry ghosts. That night, Danny traps the room 237 ghost, speaks to his mother, and takes his first step toward reclaiming his life. In 2011, as an adult, Dan Torrance drowns his trauma in alcohol and drugs. After a drunken bar fight, he wakes in a stranger's bed, preparing to steal from her purse, until he sees her young child. The ghost of Halloran reappears, reminding Dan that only ghosts can go in lockboxes. Memories stay with you forever. Drifting into a small New Hampshire town, Dan meets Billy Freeman, who senses his pain and helps him start over. Dan finds work at a hospice, where he uses his shine to comfort dying patients, earning the nickname Dr. Sleep. The True Knot, the cult led by Rose the Hat, hunts children with the shine, torturing them to extract their steam or psychic essence for food. They abduct and murder a boy named Bradley Trevor. His agonizing death feeds the whole group. Across the country, a young girl named Abra Stone psychically witnesses Bradley's torture. Her immense shine alerts Rose, who becomes obsessed with capturing her. Abra senses Dan and begins leaving messages for Dan on his blackboard wall, seeking help. Abra and Dan meet, and she shares her visions of the missing children, including Bradley Trevor. She urges Dan to help find Bradley's glove so she can track the True Knot and give his parents closure. Dan, however, warns her to stay out of it, focus on school, and avoid drawing attention to herself. He insists that if the True Knot senses her, they will come after her. That night, Dan is visited once again by Halloran, who reminds him that just as he was once helped, he now has a responsibility to help Abra. If he doesn't, Rose and the True Knot will find and kill her. Meanwhile, Rose attempts to use astral projection to get into Abra's mind, but is caught off guard when Abra fights back, turning the tables and briefly trapping Rose. Abra uses the opportunity to invade Rose's mind, learning as much as she can about the True Knot. Humiliated and enraged, Rose orders her cult to hunt Abra down. Dan and Billy help Abra locate Bradley Trevor's body, confirming her visions were real. Dan urges her to walk away, but she refuses. Together, they set a trap. Using a psychic illusion of Abra, they lure the True Knot into an ambush in a remote clearing, where Dan and Billy gun down most of them. However, one of the cult members uses their power to force Billy to turn his gun on himself, killing him. Meanwhile, Crow Daddy, Rose's second in command, ambushes Abra at home, killing her father before kidnapping her. Desperate, Abra uses her shine to connect with Dan, allowing him to possess Crow Daddy's body. Dan forces him to crash the van, killing him and freeing Abra. With the True Knot destroyed, only Rose remains, angrier and more dangerous than ever. Dan and Abra seek an advantage by returning to the abandoned Overlook Hotel, hoping its lingering evil will turn against Rose. As they arrive, Dan visits the boiler room, recognizing it as the hotel's weakness. He then awakens the Overlook's spirits, encountering familiar ghosts, including the Grady twins, Horace Derwent, and the woman from room 237. He sees the hotel room where his family stayed, where his father tried to kill him and his mother with an axe. In the gold room, Dan meets Lloyd the bartender, who resembles his father, Jack. Lloyd dismisses Dan's memories of his father and offers him a drink, calling it medicine. Abra uses her shine to tell Dan that Rose is almost at the hotel. Dan goes outside and brings Abra into the Overlook, her presence causing the lights to flicker as the hotel senses her powerful shine. Rose arrives and wanders the halls, witnessing the iconic blood-flooded elevator doors before finding Dan and Abra at the grand staircase. Dan and Abra attempt to use a psychic illusion of the Overlook hedge maze to trap Rose in a psychic lockbox, but she breaks free. Dan tells Abra to run as he attempts to attack Rose with an axe. Rose gains the upper hand and wounds Dan, feeding on his steam, which she describes as tasting like whiskey. As she probes his mind, she discovers his lockboxes. When she demands to know if something special is in them, Dan chillingly responds, "They're not special. They're starving." He unleashes the hotel's ghosts, who swarm and devour Rose, ending her reign of terror. However, the Overlook seizes control of Dan, just as it once did his father. Possessed, he turns on Abra with an axe, but momentarily regains control, telling her to run. As the hotel overtakes him again, he rushes to the boiler room, where the boiler is set to explode. Just before he shuts it off, he is able to regain control from the Overlook and stop himself as the boiler's engine begins to catch fire. In his final moment, Dan sees a vision of his mother smiling at him as the Overlook is engulfed in flames. Abra survives and continues her life, now guided by Dan's spirit. Just as he once spoke to Halloran, she communicates with him, and he assures her that her shine is a gift meant to help others. In the final scene, Abra tells her mother she was talking to Dan and that we go on. Both Dan and her father are okay. She then notices the ghost of room 237 sitting in her bathtub. She calmly walks into the room and shuts the door, ready to use her own lockboxes.